Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Karl Andersen, and I'm the founder and CEO of AVG Group Sarl and the Climate Technology Fund One. I'm joined here today with Rolf Wikborg and Daniel Roig, who are both investment committee members and partners. In general, it's a very exciting time for climate technology globally. There's a lot to celebrate. Governments have been more aggressive with policies aimed at growth, such as the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States. The Inflation Reduction Act is creating generous tax credits and subsidies to accelerate the energy transition in the United States to the tune of almost $500 billion, something our portfolio companies are tapping into. However, the IRA, as we call it, has been met with much criticism from Europe as protectionist, who in response has developed more of a European first policy. This EU proposed legislation called the Net Zero Industry Act was announced at Davos this year to counteract the IRA. Now, I don't want to weigh in on the politics of this, but this sort of green arms race is fantastic for climate technology and the infrastructure business. In addition, at COP27, there was renewed optimism as additional commitments from Japan, Mexico, Canada, and a variety of other countries are aggressively seeking net zero initiatives. In addition, the UN has created an agreement to invest $20 billion into Indonesia for the renewable energy transition. They helped establish a fund to clean up the Caribbean and created an effort to expand access to energy in Africa with the introduction of mini grids. Also, in the world of ESG and impact, definitions are finally starting to become understood. The various scoring agencies, such as World Economic Forum, TCFD, SASB, are all becoming somewhat harmonized under the International Sustainability Standards Board, or ISSB, which would be compared to the International Accounting Standards Board under the IFRS. So that's great. And finally, under SFDR, Article 6, 8, and 9 funds are starting to come under some consensus as how to implement the various rules and regulations that have been dictated to us by our wonderful policymakers. I can't tell you how long it took us as our fund to become an Article 9 fund in sort of the early years. All of this is a tailwind for the industry and funds like ours. Asset allocators, pension fund consultants, investment bankers, and other service providers have finally adjusted their mandates to catching up with investing in sustainability. So in 2023 and beyond, we're incredibly bullish on our market focus. Okay, so now Norway and the Nordics, why they win. Why do they win? Let's rewind the clocks to 2015. In 2015, a light went off in Norway. It was widely accepted at the time that peak oil had hit, and to drill the next barrel of North Sea crude was going to cost more than emerging alternatives such as solar and wind, whose price points had dramatically fallen. As a result, the Norwegian government, out of necessity to remain an energy leader, recognized that they will need to adopt a renewable energy focus rapidly. Having had 100 years of hydroelectric experience with Statkraft was a very good start. But the truth of the matter was most of their money was made on oil and gas markets and the various services that supported this market. This needed to change rapidly, and the services that supported things like renewable energy needed to be developed and supported. Therefore, they decided to enact legislation to create budgets and invest a substantial amount of capital into the renewable energy markets. With an abundance of engineers coming out of the oil and gas businesses and from offshore maritime and oil businesses, the products and services surrounding this new economy were in place, with many skills being easily transferable. This gave Norway an 8-year head start on the rest of the world. As a result, we now have 82% of cars being sold last year as EVs, the highest per capita in the world. We have 98% of domestic electric production coming from renewables. There was incredible growth through COVID as well, with charging stations being established everywhere, electric ferries, portside charging was developed, and a whole host of hydrogen and maritime technologies that had developed. Norway has already begun through its first wave of innovation. But hold on a second. You can't have fast growth and innovation without some sort of bubble, right? Well, that's exactly what happened in 2020 when many of these companies decided to go public and list on the Euronext. It was a frenzy of listings, and many of these people, we tried to advise them not to do so, but they did so anyways, with hope and optimism, only to be squashed in the following years. This didn't end up great, but as all booms and busts go, there is a silver lining. The second wave of innovation, The second wave of products and services, the ones that work, the ones that can commercialize, became self-evident in the market. The ones that were smart enough to hold on to enough cash, the ones that have a quality product or service that can survive. So now's the time to invest into these second generation technologies, the ones that are smarter and the ones that are ready to weather the markets. A final key takeaway here is that Norway and the Nordics have not just been innovating for 8 years. It's not just the innovation. And here's one of the main points I want to make today. It's the fact that society, Norwegians, Swedes, Danes, are adopting the technology just as quickly as it's innovated. Charging station technology and services, smart grid innovation, smart homes, concepts like peak shaving and industrial scale batteries all have adoption and is being put in everyday conversation in Norwegian and Nordic society. I always say even grandma and grandpa talk about trading the grid with their at-home installed battery connected to solar panels. It really does permeate society. This allows our fund to invest in companies that we know can commercialize, whether it's high-tech or low-tech. We have Norway as the laboratory of innovation and adoption to understand what will scale and, more importantly, what won't. Our team has been defending this thesis for some years now. Personally, I've been helping companies since 2015. But now we are finally vindicated by the Holy Church of McKinsey & Co. They wrote a paper called, it's a mouthful, Playing Offense to Create Nordic Sustainability Champions, in which they describe a Nordic Silicon Valley of sustainability. The ecosystem of the Nordics is a true hub for renewable energy technology, plenty of unicorns to originate from this deal flow. Sometimes people reject this idea that the Nordics or Norway could be too geographically confined or something like those countries are too small or how could they be leaders? Well, Silicon Valley was once small too. MIT is small, relatively speaking, but a lot of IP gets generated from there. And places like Texas, which hold a lot of innovation in renewable energy, does so because it comes from the oil and gas history. So the point here is that you do find very quality deal flow and very adaptable deal flow. And it's part of the Nordic ecosystem of sustainability. So with that, what I wanted to do was to spend about 30 minutes to go through this presentation and then have some Q&A to follow. So myself, Karl Andersen, I have been doing this since about 2015. I've been helping companies grow and adapt as they come into the United States. So I'm here in New York City. And I help them, I was helping them do, capital raise, identify target markets, strategic partners, and the like. And then by, around 2020, thought, probably need to put together a fund, a team, and do this if we're going to do this at scale. So I'm joined now with Rolf Wikborg, who will introduce our Norway team.
Yeah, hi, my name is Rolf Wikborg, based in Oslo, Norway, the south of Norway. I'm in Oslo together with Endre Grønmyr. Endre is not on the line today, but he's the CIO. His background is from EQT and worked in investment management in Germany and France, educated in France. My background, I've been 20 years now in Oslo after 16 years in Manhattan, managing and developing a merchant banking company called AMA Capital Partners that also managed equity funds and debt funds predominantly in the energy, offshore and maritime business. I was on the board of a few listed companies both in New York and in Oslo. Next one is Daniel from Mexico.
Well, hello. Thanks, Rolf. I'm Daniel Roig, and I am one of the partners and a member of the investment committee at AVG. I have a background in electronics engineering and obtained my MBA from the Harvard Business School. I was also involved in the sustainable energy program at MIT. As an entrepreneur, I have started and managed several businesses, including the creation of investment funds in the real estate and technology sectors. I'm currently based in Mexico City, where I head our Latin American office. Also in our team is Jim Lillis, who is our CFO and is based in New York City. He had an 18-year career at BlackRock, the world's largest investment management firm, initially serving as the controller of BlackRock and was on the team that managed the IPO process. He also was CFO and treasurer of BlackRock's commercial real estate lending group that managed over $2 billion in assets under management for institutional and high net worth investors through fund structures.
our technology fund, what are we facing? What are sort of the top sort of highlights? As everyone knows, the energy transition is well underway, as we described above. 90% of emissions are targeted for reduction under net zero commitments, and there's about $130 trillion of capital that's pinned to invest into climate technology. We have a differentiated value creation strategy by investing in Norway and the Nordics, where we find groups like heavy scientific institutions investing a lot of money and time into the venture capital world. So you have scientific organizations like Sintef, engineering firms like Norconsult, and then you have groups like Startup Lab and a variety of different areas and clusters that generate quite a substantial amount of venture deals. We are a highly experienced team. We just went through our backgrounds, such as EQT, AMA Partners, and the like. We're an Article 9 fund. For those who are not familiar with the SFDR, it basically means that we're a dark green fund, that everything we invest into has some sort of decarbonization component to it. Now, we monitor our GHG emissions, and then we report those in a quarterly report that goes out with an NAV. Our current portfolio of companies that we've invested into is targeting around a 24% return. We had started with a target of 15 to 18%, but we're achieving a higher IRR. In addition, we've paid out 2 dividends, with the third one to come. So our companies are cash flowing and investors are receiving dividends. Rolf?
Yeah. Next, Nordics. Why Nordics? They are politically stable economies. They have advanced R&D and technical expertise, like a government agency called SIVA is sponsoring incubators, clusters, catapult centers, innovation centers, etc. And if you read the McKinsey report, which we'll be happy to share, part of the success of Silicon Valley was indeed the cooperation between early movers within one small cluster. Maybe more important for the reason why the Nordics and Norway is a significant success so far is that there is a cluster of investments from not only the 1 trillion dollar oil fund in Norway that has earmarked about $10 billion now for renewable, and they had just really started moving into renewables and bought a Spanish solar park solar company recently. But then you also have Statkraft, which is the largest renewable player, producer of renewable energy in Europe, with significant activities all over the world, but in Europe, going south, going north, going west, going east. And then, of course, the Norwegian oil company changed its name from Statoil to Equinor in 2018 to really make a mark that they are moving into the renewable business. And in 2030, they want 10% of the energy produced by them to be renewable. So there is a big hub.
So many commitments, so many institutions. You name one: BlackRock, Brookfield, Rockefeller, $20 billion, $25 billion type commitments. A lot of money chasing sort of this energy transition opportunity. I think one of the challenges we've seen, though, however, is the establishment of taking new venture deals and then scaling them into these opportunities. So if you have groups like, we'll discuss this later, but groups like Rockefeller or Blackstone, their ticket sizes are 100 million, 200, 300 million. What the market's really looking for is quality growth companies that can be acquired. And we know this too, because it's true, because we've talked to several oil majors who have almost scrapped their CVC arms and are outright building sort of PE shops to acquire their way into the business. And you see this across the board. You see it with Shell, you see it with a variety of different organizations. So with that, our belief is really that the opportunity is playing in sort of, where Norway and the Nordics have they poured all this money into the venture space. Now these companies have matured, they've adopted, as mentioned, societies have adopted them. We know that they can commercialize, and while Norway is a small country, it needs markets. So we have all of this great deal flow to sort of fuel in to all these purchasers in the energy transition opportunity. And really, to be honest, the technology price points, just like solar, just like wind, they're getting cheaper in so many different areas, which is going to, frankly, some people are trying to, obviously saving the world and getting, carbon emissions down is a wonderful endeavor, but people tend to buy on price. And as those technologies catch up and get cheaper, they're going to be acquired. And I think that's, somewhat part of the analysis here. We also believe that this is going to come through something called distributed energy. So, one of the challenges also facing the globe, and, we've been going to Japan and, all over the globe trying to figure out what products and services will work for adoption into these markets. One thing we found consistently is that grid technology is a disaster, and that it gets hacked. It's exposed to cybersecurity issues, all sorts of things. So this movement towards distributed generation is the way of the future. And we've seen this happen in Norway with some of our portfolio companies that really target sort of, like the industry scale type purchasers. Think like Google. Google, it sets up a variety of, solar panels. Tries to improve on their carbon footprint. They want solar panels, they want batteries, they want to in-house their energy production. And so a variety of Fortune 1000 companies all trying to get to the same goal. Hotels, REITs, you name the industry, they're all headed this direction. Transportation, EVs, Norway is not just about EVs, even though they have 82% that was sold last year. And you have Elon Musk coming there every year, championing, the Norwegians. But in shipping, the electrification of the ports, electric ferries, hydrogen ferries, ammonia engines, these sorts of things, they all play into the new wave and the new face of energy across the board. So this is where we're seeing a very large competitive advantage. And while there's this adoption to things like EVs in Norway, it's such a great template for here. And, I'm in New York City. You actually do start seeing quite a few Teslas around, but still the charging station, rapid chargers, level 2, level 3 chargers, they're not, easily accessible. They're not obvious. So there's so many different financial plays and ways to roll these.
And just quickly, Innovation Norway has offices all over Norway, in every small corner of Norway, where good ideas are brought forward, backed, soft financed, equity partnership, loans, etc. And it's also being used by the marketing ability of Norwegian embassy system and the consulates across the world. And for example, with Norhybrid, a company where we own more than 70% down in the industrial park of Herøya, where Norsk Hydro and Yara, etc. are. We have 8 employees, and they are backed by Innovation Norway for vertical wind, smaller wind turbines, and not only as a partnership financially, but also as a second opinion for what they feel and what we feel might be a good idea. But it's a great assistance in the market. And some of the other players that we are working with is like Investinor, an equity fund that participate in investments alongside us in one of the companies where we're making black pellets to replace coal in existing coal mines that reduces CO2 dramatically, and you don't need to change the coal mine. We are partnering with Investinor. Nysnø is a 350 million euro equity fund that every year is part of the budget from the Norwegian government and invest in direct investments and fund investments, etc. Norfund is a $2.6 billion company that is government owned, that typically invest in developing markets like Vietnam, South Africa, Brazil, where they take more risk than the private equity market typically will take. And but they have 6% return on their portfolio since the commencement. So they have also been very good business people. And that is for many of the government agencies, that they actually have very, very smart, experienced people that have experience from the private equity market or the bank market, etc. So it's a well-tuned organization that cooperates then between the other government agencies. Enova has given $30 million in 3 projects that in a company that we are involved with called Greenstat. And we are the 11th largest shareholder in Greenstat, but it's more than 2,000 shareholders. It's thousands, literally, of small shareholders, and that's the idea of Greenstat. But the reason why they have been successful is that, and getting government support, is that they are driving the hydrogen development for trucks and for ferries in the Norwegian markets and beyond. So again, Enova says we want to promote hydrogen, give a grant to companies that are involved in the energies that the government and the bureaucracy think that makes sense. And Siva, I did comment on earlier.
Like Rolf mentioned, you have guys ex-McKinsey, ex-Goldman, real underwriters who understand the business they're in. And, groups like New Snow and Investinor really understand where climate technology is headed and can sort of give you some idea about like what they're thinking about and, sort of analysis on some of the companies. So they're very helpful and have been very good partners in terms of co-investment in our experience. So this slide is one that should, I hope, stay in your mind. This is really the essence of where we're investing, and really what's needed, I think, almost at a macro level, but really what's needed in terms of capital investment in this in climate technology. Basically, you've had all this money since 2015, as mentioned, especially in Norway, Nordic area, all this venture money that has created all this new IP, all this growth, and the like. But the bottleneck really is then getting those venture companies, and not science fair projects, we've seen plenty of those, but real commercial high-tech or low-tech companies that can really expand out into the globe, really adapt to new markets and are resilient in those new markets. And again, the other thing, as mentioned earlier, is you have like very large acquirers of technology or of companies, such as the oil majors, groups like Schneider Electric, 3M, other energy producers, utility companies that are looking for developed technology where there's no real risk. So our main goal is investing, between small as $1 million up to 15 million. Just it's a wide range, but taking a significant minority interest to then build those companies, build their management. Oftentimes in Norway and the Nordics, you get strong CTOs, sort of the chief technical or chief innovative officer, or chief engineering officer, who creates the product, but maybe they don't have the right marketing for entering the United States or Japan or whatever. So that's the kind of work we do. But then we can turn it into something where, the next purchaser, and actually in some of our cases, are writing a $100 million check, which is their sort of minimum to get involved. In one of our cases, being capital raised through JP Morgan. So and this is Norway and the Nordics very much. This is like a common case. But I would say more globally, this is true too. There is a lack of deal flow and underwriting from the technical side into the capital markets, and clarifying what that technology is, and then not sort of in utility scale solar and wind, that's a pretty well beaten path, but more specifically in the products and services, charging stations, in the distributed energy technology markets. So
and one of AVG's main differentiating strategies lies in its ability to bring Norwegian technology to the global markets. We currently have offices in Oslo, Luxembourg, New York, and Mexico City, and we'll be opening Japan and Singapore this year. This international presence in Latin America, Asia, Europe, and the US offers our portfolio companies a key advantage to help them scale globally. A clear example of our deep involvement with portfolio companies can be found in the US, as Karl already mentioned it. As you may know, in August 2022, the US passed the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, which provides $369 billion for climate and clean energy provisions. AVG has formed a team with specific knowledge of the IRA in order to help our portfolio companies expand into the US market and take full advantage of it.
Market. One of the things that's lacking is an ability to underwrite at an insurance level the climate technology that's being innovated. So what we've done is we've worked with groups like Munich Re, Aspen, who've been working on developing circular economy policies. And what this does is it basically attaches an insurance policy. And as you can see in the drawing, there's, the performance of the technology may increase or decrease over time. We measure that with the insurance company and create a policy which protects debt, interest, and partial return of equity. So I guess you got to think back to the 2006, 2007 days when we were able to secure these debt capital markets. And what we found is for capital markets, that's one of the major impediments for them to get involved or invest. They may have earmarked billions of dollars to invest in climate technology, but when it comes to underwriting, they're not willing to take the risk, or to the company, they're charging crazy interest rates or what have you. So what we do is we actually have set up AVG Insurance, which is a cut-through vehicle to allow the reinsurance markets to access our portfolio companies and vice versa. In this way, especially for our sort of power-producing type companies, groups in anaerobic digestion, microhydro, and these sorts of markets, it's great because now it's somewhat of a low-tech technology. We can get our insurance underwriters to underwrite it, and then we can drop their cost of capital, increasing the IRR investments on each one of our companies. We are registered, AVG is registered with the International REC standard, Vera, and the Gold standard. This has everything to do with carbon credits. Many of our portfolio companies don't understand how to create voluntary carbon credits, so we help them do that in the process.
So the fund is Luxembourg-based and has a Delaware feeder fund. Depending on each investor's tax strategy or preference, they can invest directly in Luxembourg or in the Delaware feeder. In both cases, all terms are the same. Our first closing was in March of 2021, and our final closing date is March 31st of this year. We know that we are only a couple months away from the final closing, but for investors that make a firm commitment to invest before this date, but foresee a longer final due diligence period, we could be flexible to complete this DD within the next couple of months of final closing. Based on our current projections, as Karl said, we're estimating a base case net annual IRR of between 20 and 25%, with a multiple of investment capital of about 2.3 to 2.7. We are structured with a standard European waterfall so that the investors get the return of principal first, then a minimum return of 8% per annum, and then the GP can take performance fees. We have a standard 220 structure with a 2% management fee and 20% of profits as a performance fee, which, as I mentioned before, is only received once investors get their capital plus 8% per annum return. We contemplate having an investment period of 4 years with 3 possible 1-year extensions in case exit conditions are not ideal at the 4-year mark. Our target fund size is $150 million, and we have a minimum ticket of $1 million, although the GP could be somewhat flexible with this minimum in some specific cases. As a fund, we usually take significant minority stake positions, as Karl mentioned, in the companies we invest in. At present, we are invested in 7 companies and have a target to be invested in a total of about 15 companies.
Alternus is an Irish-based company, that solar company quoted on the Oslo Exchange, the Euronext. They're the one that I mentioned raised 130 million euro of non-amortizing bonds. Interesting company that has been growing fast since we made an investment of about $9 million, $9.4 million. It's a 10% note with a convertibility of half. And fortunately, and we have been involved in introducing a SPAC in the United States that is sitting on $230 million cash, and they have agreed to merge, and the SEC filing was done last week, and then we have to sit and wait for some months for the SEC to approve, and then hopefully there will be a de-SPAC that is attractive. There's a guarantee for $25 million new equity in the NASDAQ listed company. They have solar parks in 7 European countries and are growing fast in the United States with an office in Charlotte. And North Solar is also a solar company, but totally different. They have typically developing country large sites with industrial and investment grade off-takers, have typically partnered with Norfund and are in many ways underpriced, but we believe in the true value and that will come forward in the future, and that the company is doing all the right things, and the developing world needs solar. So we think they will grow and do very well.
Norhybrid is a modular wind company. So instead of these big fan blade utility scale rotors, this is second generation technology where the fan blades actually spin horizontally. It's about 9 meters tall, or it can be detached and added to rooftops. This is a brilliant innovation to marry with solar and distributed energy assets. Strategy is to really partner with sort of existing EPC developers or groups like Alternus or Norsk Solar, who have existing solar and really want to enhance their per square footage of developing, more electricity, more energy. They also have their own sort of strategy of building, constructing both the wind, the solar, and battery packs with a sort of a management system, a management tool. And so we expect them to be a very good player. They're actually coming here to the United States in a couple of weeks. We're doing events with the embassy and looking at various targets in the Midwest to grow that company. Arboflame is consider it sort of the hybrid between coal and then black pellets. It basically is a perfect substitute for coal. So a coal-fired power plant could take the black pellet and burn it 50-50. There's no retrofit to the boilers. And so it's a great technology. One of the things that we had been nervous about, honestly, was typically biomass pellets are more expensive than coal. Newcastle brick coal had historically been super cheap. Well, since COVID and since some of the carbon taxes, those have actually come in line. So there's many new purchasers. The bottleneck there is just scale. So that's what we're looking at to grow Arboflame, both not only in Europe, but here in the United States. And we've had quite a bit of interest as well from Japan.
But, as I briefly mentioned, is really a hydrogen development company for trucks and ferries. But beyond that, with a lot of government support. Beyond that, also involved in solar and wind. And it's a very, very interesting company that is going to raise additional money soon, and is one of the leading experts on hydrogen and how that could work. They are active in India, and they are participating now in the government trip to India in the Ministry of Energy.
So CleanBay is a biogas producer. They take chicken waste and convert it into renewable natural gas. BP is the offtake for both the renewable natural gas, the carbon credits, and then we produce also organic fertilizer. They are in process right now to courting a really large investors with JP Morgan, about $100 million type ticket size. And so we're really bullish about that. The industry, I know a variety of, simultaneous to this, and that goes into hypothermics, but Shell and some of the oil majors have been super active and focused on biogas. So there's a strong interest on these biogas developers.
Hypothermics develops and supplies compact biotechnological facilities that convert organic waste into renewable energy, such as biogas, fertilizers, and protein mass. But they do this in a significantly faster way than other solutions in the market. Hypothermics uses a type of bacteria that's obtained from heat sources such as underwater volcanoes. And this bacteria is used in reactors which can convert the biomass into biogas or protein in a matter of hours as opposed to days. The process can be up to 6 times faster, but it can also yield up to 50% more biogas than the regular process.
So you kind of learned what we have invested into. Now, what are we going to invest into? Company number one is a very dear company to us. They've basically built an energy management system that coordinates wind, solar, and any sort of power production input, mostly for industry scale usage. So companies like Google, Fortune 1000 companies trying to lower their carbon footprint, simple to use dashboard, connected to the grid. And so what's interesting about them is the AI technology that they have connects to the battery, solar, and optimizes trading on the grid. So you can actually earn money from owning renewable energy investments. So not only do you get sort of all the tax credits for investing into the setup, at least in the United States, probably elsewhere as well, but you get this trading activity from the battery and the grid operators utilizing the excess battery capacity. So we're really excited about that. Simple interface, simple to use. Any sort of CFO could manage this and get the report monthly to demonstrate to their shareholders their capabilities.
Probably know there's a lot of rain and water in Norway, and for more than 100 years, hydroelectric power has been the cornerstone of Norwegian energy, and really established the industrial base for Norway on the basis of cheap green energy. That has, of course, changed, and we are exporting more energy now to the continent. And we have seen an opportunity and joined forces with some of the most experienced teams in the hydroelectric power plant development. But we are concentrating on the smaller rivers, the between 1 to 5 megawatt rivers that are small, that are less bureaucratic to apply for the license. They, in most cases, have already an old license. And we look at economies of scale to benefit from larger orders of equipment in order to reduce cost and thereby have a successful return. Of course, the electricity price has gone up a lot lately, and it might not stay as high. But we believe that hydroelectric power, combined maybe with wind and solar and battery storage, trading the grid and having the benefit of various sources, is an opportunity, particularly on the west coast of Norway. But we can export that also around the world, which Norway has done in the past as well for larger projects.
The third company in our immediate pipeline is a Norwegian company also, which offers a revolutionary technology within transformers and cables, providing up to 25% more usable electricity with the same energy consumption. With applications in various sectors, its direct market is considered to be over $200 billion, which is a great opportunity.
So 4 is really a sensor and offshore and maritime. We believe there is going to be a revolution within not only fuel for maritime with e-methanol and hydrogen for ferries and coastal and ammonia, but also within the maritime world of sensors, of efficiencies, of reduction of cost. So we are looking at one company that is very much involved in making maritime world more efficient. It's an offshore wind play where some smart people in Norway have developed the idea that why have a 90% degree from the water base rather than have a floating wind turbine that will cost less and produce more and has a counter has 2 wings so that one goes one way and the other way. In order to have a more efficient production of energy. And it's early stage, and it's probably it will take quite a few years, but these are some of the smarter people in the business, and the offshore wind market is growing dramatically, and we believe that the cost and the output is significantly different compared to the existing ones.
ESG has obviously been a confusing space, and is actually kind of annoying because it doesn't have to be. The way we look at it is basically all of these sort of TCFD or WEF, they're more or less like credit rating agencies because they ask really the same questions. So it's like Moody's or S&P, it's kind of similar thing. So what we do though with our potential investors or investors that really understand the space is we put sort of a numeric score to the ESG profiles. And we also visualize it so that they're empowered to show to their trustees or shareholders or what have you, real information about what's happening with the portfolio companies. Each portfolio company has to fill one of these out. We grade them, and so from a sort of a perspective of greenwashing or whatever, we're actually extremely straightforward and honest about it. We understand that solar is not perfectly green yet, or wind may not be perfectly green, but it's an energy transition. And so we want to address those problems and be able to improve upon those, over time. So like, for example, you get a statement with our NAV quarterly, which will say, for every $1 million you invested, 731 homes have been, have been produced by renewable energy, or the equivalent of 5,921 metric tons of carbon have been taken out of the atmosphere. This is a much longer report, but this is just sort of a snapshot. Then we have, sort of Class A service providers. We have an office in Luxembourg, where our core U.S. bank is, but that's also for our feeder fund here in the United States. And I want to thank you for joining us and listening to, what we have to offer.
I want you to hold me, come and lay with me, set aside your problems with me, baby. Save your conversation.